Hello and welcome to Literary Prospects. I'm Kelley Vick, your host, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's guest. Kristin Bair is a big-hearted storyteller who skewers the patriarchy with wit and warmth. Her novels, Agatha Arch is Afraid of Everything, a People magazine best new book, The Art of Floating, and Thirsty, shine a fierce and funny light on womanhood, identity, and power. Her latest, Clementine Crane Prefers Not To, is a blazing anthem for anyone ready to rewrite the rules. Kristin Bair, thank you so much for being here today to discuss your uproarious new novel, Clementine Crane Prefers Not To. Library Journal says Bair's humor is broad. Women will cheer right along with Clementine as she resists the strictures of her status as a middle-aged woman, grows her following on TikTok, reads the Riot Act to a doctor who trivializes her symptoms, and regains agency in her family. Booklist says Bair captures Clementine's journey with humor, and it's hard not to cheer for her as she takes back control of her life. Author Abby Waxman says Clementine is every woman who found her voice and discovered freedom. Relatable, insightful, honest. Loved it. And author C.V. Renard says Bair's surgically precise prose made me howl with both laughter and the pain of self-awareness at once. Clementine Crane should be required reading for men of all ages. In fact, all of her novels should be required reading, period. So, with that, welcome, Kristin. And what can you tell us about Clementine Crane Prefers Not To? How do you describe it?
Well, thank you for having me here. It's wonderful to be with you. I describe it as a woman radicalized against the patriarchy by her first hot flash of perimenopause. It grew out of my own journey through perimenopause. And night sweats particularly, and has two literary references throughout that it really grew out of as well.
So normally I say what was the spark that really started this for you. Here I really want to say what was the flash?
Well, there was a particular flash in a grocery store where I literally just wanted to crawl into, the freezer and cool off, like, that overwhelming sweat pouring, face reddening, body, want to rip off your clothes kind of flash. And then it was also the night sweats, because for a long time I would wake in the middle of the night and my head would be drenched, like from the neck up. My hair would be so sopping wet, as if someone had, I was like one of those troll dolls with the hair, and someone had taken me and just dunked me in water. Like my body was dry, but my head and my pillow were soaked. And those were the things that really got me thinking that there might be a story here.
And when did the rest of the story start to come into play? When did you know, all right, this is something that's gonna
Yeah. I think about women a lot. All of my novels deal with a woman in a situation that is imposed in some way by the patriarchy. I think about men and women a great deal, and our role in family, our role in the workplace. And so when I started thinking about this, there's two. The first is A Doll's House, Henrik Ibsen's The Play, which I first read in 10th grade, like 100 years ago. And Nora and Torvald and her situation with him. And I knew in 10th grade, because I was, one of those people who's been writing since they were born.
Mm.
I knew in 10th grade, I said, listen to myself, someday I'm going to use this. I don't know what it's going to work its way into, but I know. And so I've been kind of obsessed with that play ever since. Um, and then Herman Melville's Bartleby the Scrivener, A Story of Wall Street, which I read in grad school. I was getting my MFA. I read that story, and his determined resistance with, he said, I would prefer not to. Clem loses the would, the conditional. She's firmer, it's a new age. And I knew then, I was like, someday this is going to work its way into something I write.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started to really, work the pages of Clem and figure out, what is she really struggling against? And I knew it had to do with family and mental load and marriage and motherhood and the pressures that women are under. Both of those things, I was like, well, there you are. I knew you were going to come back someday.
Yep.
And I started to weave those in.
What does your process look like as we're talking about weaving in? From when you get that first spark of an idea to when you get to finished draft, what does that look like for you? And was it different for Clementine than for your previous books?
I wish it were different. I wish I were like one of these writers who drew, constructed an outline and, made things, A leads to B leads to C. I'm much messier than that. I come up with that idea, and the first chapter, that is the first chapter in the published book, is actually the first scene I wrote.
Wow.
Now, it was pretty ugly at that point. It wasn't very polished, but that was the scene. And then I write around things a lot. Like, I have to figure out like who's in this story and what is their role and how many kids does she have and what is her relationship with each one. And I actually wrote this whole thing before I turned it into my editor. And she came back with a question that actually changed the entire construct of the whole book. And I was like, okay, let me think about that. And it turns out she was right. It was actually a very good decision, but it meant I had to go in and break some things and throw some other things out and really reshape from the change. I don't want to give it away, but the change that I made.
I was going to say, can we know what the question is, or we can?
No, it'll give too much away. It'll give too much away, but in a year, I'll tell you.
Okay. How did your characters come to you? How did Clementine in particular?
Yeah, she's an interesting character because she starts out, she's a mom of three, she has a job, she's a good wife, she is one of these people who does everything for everyone. Mm-hmm. She's like so I think I say in there somewhere that she's like the now I want to say golden doodle. What is the dog? The golden retriever. She's the golden retriever of women. Somebody says, fetch, and she fetches. But that hot flash changed her. And when this story started to like bubble up, I started to think about perimenopause like on a larger scale in a societal way, because although it is having a flashpoint right now, it is very much in the zeitgeist. Lots of people are talking about perimenopause and menopause. When I started this in 2020, it wasn't like that. Like it was still tamped down and hush hush. And so I started to think like that hot flash, like it's a moment of change, I believe, for women. Like it is a reckoning. It is an awakening. And so when I figured out that that was like her flashpoint, that things would change, I knew I had to like construct her world in a way that the change would be magnificent. Mm-hmm. And so I just started, I started thinking about all the women I know and all the stories I read in the news and women's groups online. And then I just started to build her from there.
Why do you think perimenopause is having Such a moment right now.
Such a moment, right? Um,
As opposed to 2020 or, it really
yeah,
feel like
yeah,
everybody's talking about it. And then I wondered if I'm just hearing about it all the time because of my age or,
right.
you know,
Exactly. Yeah. Um, I think it definitely, I don't think it's because of the age. I think everyone is hearing about it more. I think people are my age and you're possibly your age are paying more attention to it.
Mhm.
Um, I like to think it's because Clementine Crane came out. But I think, one of the things I say about my books is that I write a lot about pissed off women. Like
Mm.
I have a dream that every bookstore, independent, Barnes and Noble has, how they have the tables like beach reads
Yeah.
and bestsellers. And, I want to have a pissed off woman's table
Hmm.
because there are so many books about women who are just ticked off about how things have been and I think there's just a little awakening in women and women are tired of not having our medical needs met, not having the emotional needs met, like crumbling under the mental load that has been, stamped on us.
Hmm.
And I think it's kind of an eruption, like, society comes to like an eruption point. And I think it also may have something to do with the politics that are going on right now and the attempted removal of women's rights again.
Again.
Again, again. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned mental load,
Yes.
and that is one of the themes explored in the book as well.
Hmm.
And you have said that you actually think the mental load is heavier now than it ever has been,
Yeah.
um, made heavier by technology.
Oh
Can you?
my God. Like already today, I have two kids. They're 17 and 12.
Mhm.
Already today, I have signed my son up for basketball, which literally took me 45 minutes. And I have not yet entered the dates, the many dates into the family calendar. And that was just the process.
Mhm.
And then plays baritone. And I've been texting with the music school where he takes lessons because he needs an extra half hour and is there a makeup and back and forth. And then I've received, I don't know, 60 texts today about various things. Some I need to answer and some are just reminder, reminder. Um, the mental load, it makes me crazy. Like, because I look and I love my husband dearly, but he doesn't even know about any of this stuff. He
Mhm.
doesn't even know that it exists, that I do this. And I think it's that way for a lot of couples. Um, yeah, makes me nuts.
Yeah, yeah. And so the norm. And it's, it really is true. I hadn't thought about it that way. But yes, the technology that is supposed to be making our lives easier, and
Yes.
in many ways does. But
Yeah.
it is a constant sort of, I'm doing this, but this is dinging over here.
Yeah.
This person needs attention and that person needs attention.
Yep.
24/7.
Yeah. And any kind of concentrated activity that you're doing, whether you're writing, whether you're at your job, whether you're reading a book or having a conversation, there is always, if your phone is there,
Mhm.
it's that dinging, I need something, I need something, I need something. And although I like to say that I'm very good at, managing a lot of things at the same time,
Mhm.
I know it detracts, from my productivity, my um, creativity, that ability to really channel
Mhm. Mhm.
a story or an essay.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And yet we feel like we can't be without it.
Yeah. And like things are so like my 17-year-old needs this full body suit. She's in color guard, and she's at school. I'm like, you're at school. Why are you sending me Amazon? Like, got to buy this now. You got to buy this now. And until I answer, because she will just keep being, I need this. I need this. I'm like, what are you doing? Go to school and do your work. Um, but I think, it's where we are right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of women's relationships, Clementine's neighbor is a key role in the novel. She's Clementine's best friend, and she's 87 years old. And you've said that you really value this idea of generational, can't even say it, relationships among women, especially.
Mhm.
Why is
Yeah.
that?
I think that we have forgotten how interesting and funny and informative people who have already been through the stuff that we've been through
Mm,
are, and we isolate people, we put them in senior centers, we put them in nursing homes, and we put our little kids in daycare,
mhm,
right? Um, and I think we're really missing something in that. During the book launch last week at the launch event at the bookstore, there was my own mother was there, she's 86, and then there were the woman who introduced me at the bookstore, I think she's 88, she could be 86, but she's in her mid to high 80s as
mhm.
well. Um, and they're so full of story. I mean, they're so full of humor, and they've just seen it all. I think about my own grandmother who, would cook these meals for like 30 people on Christmas Eve at 1 a.m. I'm like, are you insane? I mean, and she never grumbled. And I just think like we're missing something by not hanging out with them.
Yeah.
So when I was thinking about Clem, I thought, she needs a friend like this. She needs to be able to benefit from somebody's wisdom and somebody else's humor
Mhm.
in that way. So then Georgia started to come to life in my noggin.
We heard in the blurbs that this novel should be a required reading for men. Do you
Yes,
agree?
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I think it would make them very uncomfortable
Mm.
and nervous and, and worried about their relationships, perhaps. But I think they would learn so much about their partners and their moms and their daughters and their friends. Absolutely. I think Chris Bernard is right on the money with that one.
This is your fourth novel.
It is.
Your most recent novels have a much lighter tone than your first two.
Yeah.
And you've said that you feel like you've grown into your voice as a writer.
Yeah,
Can you
I
talk
have.
about that?
Yeah. So my first two, the first one was Thirsty. It came out in 2009. It's a pretty serious historical fiction novel about a woman who is abused. The second one, The Art of Floating, came out in 2000, I think, 14. And that's the story of a woman whose husband disappears and who she finds a mysterious man who is mute and catatonic on the beach. And she sets off on this journey to figure out where her husband disappeared and where this man came from. Um, and then Agatha Arch. And that's where kind of my humor
Mm.
really started to take hold. I think The Art of Floating is like my transitional book, like to my voice.
Mhm.
Um, I think part of that was grad school. Um, I got my MFA at Columbia College in Chicago, which was an amazing time with such talented writers and
Mm.
such talented teachers. And an MFA gives you time, it gives you focus, it gives you money, it gives you, just that concentration.
Mhm.
But I also found it really challenging to separate out all the voices. So Thirsty was written as my MFA thesis.
Mm.
So the first very strong draft
Mm.
was written there. And then I took it after that. But by then, I think my own head was confused.
Mhm.
And I love that book and I love that story. It grew out of my own experience in the steel communities in Pittsburgh.
Mm.
Um, but I wasn't myself in the writing yet.
Mm.
And so I think I have just moved through each book and gotten closer and closer. And I feel like I'm very close with Clementine Crane,
Mhm.
um, to like that true self coming out
Mhm.
on the page. And, while it is, I hope, uproariously funny, as a number of people have said, it's also very serious. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of, and that's the same way with Agatha Arch, there's a lot of serious topics that I, explore and grapple with and have
Mhm.
my characters do so. But I love to use humor to really connect with readers and myself, you know.
What is it about humor that you think really does that, makes that connection?
I think it's universal.
Mhm.
And I also think it takes blame away to a certain degree. It takes the edge off things. Um, it makes it easier for people to be present with something serious.
Mhm.
And that's the way I've always been, you know.
Mhm.
Um, Not that the serious doesn't exist and have to be obviously grappled with,
Mhm.
um, but the humor helps how it moves forward.
Yeah. You also teach writing.
I do.
You teach
Yep.
at Yale Writers Workshop in the summers, among other places.
Yep.
And you're known for helping other writers with this idea of finding
Yeah.
the voice.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
It's so funny because I think people come to it either if I'm doing a workshop or if I'm working with somebody one on one. I think they've all, like, writers are, I think they're often hemmed into something.
Mhm.
There's a lot of control. Like, and I take control out of it. Like, I want to hear somebody's stories in their storytelling voice. I want them to tell the truth. I want them to um, get all that stuff out in an authentic way. And a
Mhm.
lot of it is writing things more than one time. Like a lot of times, like The Art of Floating, I think I wrote that 46 times. And I'm
Wow.
talking like a lot. Like I'm very polished when things are done. That's why Clementine Crane was a little harder that way.
Mhm.
But I mean, I love helping writers find their voices. I'm now starting to, next week, we're doing a pop-up writing workshop for perimenopausal and menopausal women in my town. Um,
That's great.
and, for not just for writers, for everybody, because I think people have stories that they need to get out.
Mhm.
And so I'm starting to do that more and more. I did that virtually, probably 2 months ago, and I'm going to do another one. But I love finding story, and I love helping people connect to that voice.
Is that your favorite thing about teaching?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the moment when they recognize that in themselves.
Wow.
It's one thing for me to recognize, to go, oh, there you are. It's
Mhm.
another thing for them to recognize it. And it's just very cool.
I have to go back to the 46 drafts thing for a second. I'm wondering what that looks like. Well, and in thinking about the finding of the voice and then just getting it out, are you like writing a draft and putting it away and starting over, or are you kind of working and tinkering with the same draft going through? What does that look like?
In the beginning, it's more a full draft, put it away, come back, start again. I do
Mhm.
that a couple times. But
Mhm.
the rest of that 46 drafts is not a full a full rewrite.
Mhm.
I am just obsessive. Like I go in and just, it's like I'm digging a hole somewhere and I just rewrite and rewrite and I do it as I write as well. So I'm, you know, a lot of writers come to me and they're like, well, I've been told that I should finish a draft. And I'm always like, well, can't tell you, what I don't practice. um, but I rewrite and rewrite. So those first three books, and I don't let anybody read anything anymore either. Like that thirsty, that I wrote in a group was the end of my lots of people read my work experience in the world. So I live with it very tightly in myself. And those 3 were so polished when I was done with them that publishers did very, very little. Like my editors almost very tiny changes. And then Clementine Crane sold before it was written. So it was sold on 1 chapter.
Wow.
And then I was like, so excited. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like, who doesn't want that? Then I was like, oh, crap.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, oh no, what have I done? So I actually missed a couple of big deadlines. There was a pressure on it, and then, my editor wanted to see it before I normally would ever share it, which in that way that I mentioned, that one big thing that I changed made sense. But it was still really, really hard to do.
Do you have a particular routine?
I do. Yeah. I'm a nutball. I get up at 4 every day, and get a cup of coffee. I set it up in the night before so that it's, as a timer. And I sit down. I literally have like a 4x4. It's like a small walk-in closet, and it's a tiny little writing space. Like I'm touching both walls right now. And I sit down here until the kids get up and I have to move them forward in life. So that's like 6:30-ish. And until 3 weeks ago, I had a day job. So I have since resigned from that to really focus on writing this next book and teaching and doing some other creative things out there in the world. But that was intense too, because my day job was writing. So, that takes so much of your space, So yeah.
So saving that early morning time just for the creative.
Yes. Yeah. I try not to. With the launch, there's a lot more social media going on. So I'm doing some social media during that 4 to 6:30 time. But normally that is just, I call it being in writer head. Like that is writer head time. And if anybody comes to talk to me, they regret they did so very quickly. Yeah. It's my husband and I met 20 years ago, and 6 weeks we were engaged within 2 months, and then we moved to China.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we barely knew each other, and we moved to China, which neither one of us spoke a word of Mandarin at the time. And he knew I was a writer, and that my first book had just been bought and it was going to be coming out. And so we moved to China, and, we're newlyweds. So it's like 4 a.m. and he's like, hello, honey, kiss, kiss. And I'm like, I am in my head.
This is my time.
That's right. I would get up and I would go into my eye, and he's like, who have I married? And it's never changed. It has not changed.
Well, it seems to have worked out.
It does. Yes. It has worked out.
And you said you've always been a writer?
I have. Like when I was 7 is when I figured it out. I have 3 sisters, and we always played wiffle ball with my parents in the backyard in the summer. And all of them were out in the backyard. My little window, looked over the backyard. And I was in there. I was writing my first poem. And my mom came to the windows on the first floor, and she's like, Kristin, come on out here for wiffle ball. And I was like, Mother, I am a poet. I am a writer. You cannot interrupt me for wiffle. Like I was just astounded. And she was like, what? And I was like, do not bother me. I am right. And it was a poem called The Hummingbird. I had never seen a hummingbird. But that was it. And then from that day on, I like obsessively wrote. And had always. In middle school and early high school, I wrote parodies, like satirical parodies of my older sister's high school friend group. There was a play about a guy with a flower growing out of his head. And then undergrad, it was English, with a creative writing focus. And then grad school and teaching and It's all I've ever wanted. And I'm happy to say it seems to be working out.
It does.
Yeah.
What was the road to publication like for you?
Yeah, it's not easy and not straightforward. So
Mm.
Thirsty came out with a small press out of Ohio University, Swallow Press, which was an amazing experience. And then my next novel, The Art of Floating, came out with one of the big five, Penguin.
Mhm.
And then the next two came out with Alcove. So I'm one of the few writers who has done like all sizes of publishing
Yeah.
house, which has given me a really interesting perspective on publishing.
Mhm.
And each one had strengths in different ways. Um, I've never been one of those writers where the light shines on them and it's like, ah, like, here you are.
Mhm.
Um, I feel more like the scrappy, climb the mountain kind of writer, but
Mhm.
I like that. So it's
Do
good.
you prefer, is there one that you feel like you prefer more, smaller press versus big five, the experience? Can you shed a little?
Yeah, I mean, they each had strengths.
Mhm.
Um, I've been very happy at Alcove where they've done the last two.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think they each have their little mini strengths, and I try to focus on those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agent
Mhm.
situation. How
Yeah.
did that come about for you?
So I speak at conferences pretty frequently,
Mhm.
and I think it was so my first book came out without an agent. I sold it without an agent to Swallow Press. And then I was working on I wrote The Art of Floating while we were living in China for 5 years. Um, and during that 5 years, I would come home and speak at writing conferences. And there was an agent at this writing conference where I was speaking, and I was like, I want her. Like, she is the smartest book person. She's just smart and she's funny and she's irreverent and she has a voice.
Mhm.
And I was like, I want her. I didn't tell her that at the point. So when Art of Floating was ready to be shared with an agent, I think she was the first person I sent it to. And she's a texter. And which I thought was hilarious. I was like, what in the heck? And she was like, I want the whole thing. And I was like, okay, great. That's a good thing. So I sent her the whole thing. And she's like, I'm going to read it this weekend. I can't wait for this. And I was like, okay. And then she continued to text me throughout the weekend. It was the most nerve-wracking, exciting, heart-wrenching week of my life because she was like, I can't even eat dinner. Where have you been? My husband says I need to eat. I can't eat. Like all these
Oh,
texts.
wonderful.
Then finally on Sunday, she's like, can we talk tomorrow? And she has represented me ever since. So she's pretty cool.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
What do you know now that you wish you had known before maybe even publishing your first book?
Yeah. That is a great question. And I would say, I wish I had known to protect my voice and my way of storytelling better. The
Mm.
first time I really heard my voice and my storytelling instinct, which isn't what everyone's is. I was a freshman, sophomore in college, and I wrote this um, short story for a class about a potato and the food server in the student union.
Mm.
And it was very me. It was very rough and probably hideously ugly, but it was also me. And you could hear it, and it was a story. And the professor came to me and said, we're having this coalition of English professors come to campus next week. I want you to read this. At that point, I was the shyest human. Literally, if you made me speak, I just exploded. Um,
Mm.
it was terrible. But at the same time, I knew I had written something that expressed me.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to do it more than anything. So I
Mhm.
said to him, I need to be able to sit crisscross applesauce. He was like, what? I'm like, otherwise I will pass out. And he was like, okay. So those big tables at the front of those big English conference halls.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably, I don't know, in my head, it's like 50 to 75 English professors who were visiting. And I sat there, crisscross applesauce on this table, and read the story to them. And they laughed and they, and they nudged. And I was like, there I am, that there I am on the page. And then, reading work that you're supposed to admire, and then going to grad school and all these voices. And I lost it. Like, I really lost who I was on the page, and I found it. It's a long journey, but I wish I knew, like, back at that potato story, don't let go of this. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to instill in all my writers that I work with, but especially the young ones, who don't have confidence once they find their voice. So I'm like, hold that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, speaking of confidence, you just mentioned how shy you felt reading this piece, and yet we've been hearing about how you speak at writing conferences.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about how you got there? Because I think that is a problem for a lot of writers, probably feel quite introverted, and part of publishing is being comfortable public speaking, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I was literally, I think I always say, the shyest human in the world out in public, right?
Mm-hmm.
In school. Like, if someone called my name, literally the heart palpitations. I passed out in high school giving a speech, and this guy who I hated otherwise slid his hand under my head before I, cracked it on the floor. And I'm always like, damn, I gotta give him credit for that. Even though I couldn't stand him. At home, I was always big, funny, boisterous, me. Like the human I wanted to be all the time, kind of quirky, kind of, myself. And I always tried, like I tried when I went away to college. I'm like, okay, now is the time. Like, I am going to go away, far away from everybody who knew me. A little bit, it helped a little bit, not much, which was very telling in that story that I had to read out loud. Then when I went to grad school, I think it was my second year, the director of our program, this amazing guy, Randy Albers, came to me and said, I want you to teach a workshop for the undergrads. And I was like, what? And like inside me was so excited, because I thought, I would never thought of teaching, And I said, okay, fine. So the next term started, and we taught, I think they were 3.5-hour long workshops. And I was all amped up. I was hyper prepared, and I gave them a break at halftime. It was like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. And I went into the bathroom, and I was washing my hands, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and my hair, I have really curly, crazy hair. And it was like I'm a chia pet. Like, my hair was like curled and frizzed and standing on it. My face was beet red, and I had the biggest smile on my face. And I was like, I am so happy up there. Like, I was just like the bubbly, talking, chatting, storytelling me. And I was like, oh, there you are again. And ever since then, I have not stopped. Like, I love talking to groups. I love getting on stage and talking to audiences and doing launches and giving, speeches at talks. And I still get a little nervous beforehand. I don't know if anybody ever gets rid of that completely. Yeah. But I love it. So it's my favorite thing to do besides writing.
And it was just pushing yourself.
Yeah.
Do it. And then like the switch flipped.
Yeah. And I feel like I was given permission both by Randy, and confidence, again, instilling that kind of, like, I know you can do this. I know you're supposed to do this. And then me giving myself that same permission. I mean, I think so much of writing and the writing life is about permission. And I think, it's interesting having resigned from my job a month ago, not even a month ago, 3 weeks ago. This is another kind of permission for me, because my entire life, all I've wanted to do is write and teach and write and teach and speak and teach and do lots and lots of that. But there's that fear of like, and it's not just financial, there's that concern, but it's also artists don't get to support themselves, in this way through their work. And that is, that's instilled in us in a million different ways, little tiny things all the time, these big, sledgehammers coming down. And I have been working toward that, I think since I was 7. And I finally said, that's it. I am going to do it. Come hell or high water, I am doing this. And again, it's confidence and it's permission. And I think the writing life is so much about those two things, and finding people that help us feel that way.
Why do you think that is, that there is this feeling that, yes, you shouldn't support yourself on your art? Sometimes it does almost feel like you're sort of giving yourself. I was talking about this with another writer the other day, how it almost feels like for some reason you need to give yourself permission to give yourself the time to do the work.
And it's, I think our society is so geared toward a certain kind of success and a certain kind of work that what we do is strange. I think it's mysterious to people. And obviously, tons of people benefit from it. They go to bookstores, they go to libraries, they read books in school. But I think it's so, and I think the mystery is good. I don't think everybody could do what we do. But I also think that people like to control what they don't understand. And I think a lot of people don't understand what we do. And so it's easier to say, I mean, even in my own life, and my parents live with me now because I don't have enough to do. When I was applying to undergrad, my parents said to me, I said, I'm going to be a writer. And they said, you can't just major in English and be a writer. And I was like, of course I can. And again, they took that permission away. And they said, no, you can't. So I double majored. I majored in journalism, which has served me well as a writer in terms of, the day job kind of thing. But again, in retrospect, I would have thrown that whole thing away and done what I do, and spent time earlier doing those things. So even with my own kids, I am never, you can't, I'm always like, you can, you absolutely can. You got to figure it out, but it's there and it's worth it,
What's your favorite piece of advice for aspiring authors?
Writing begets writing. I think there's I always tell this story, and if he ever hears this, he's going to kick me. I worked with a writer in Hong Kong and Shanghai for years, like a executive type of guy who's really, again, in his heart, a writer, and would love to just, I think, do that, but life. And when we were working together, we were both living in Shanghai, and then we were working remotely once I came back here. He would call me or text me or send me a note and say, I have been thinking about this scene, and I'm thinking, and he'd be, drawing it out, all kinds of possibilities. And I'm like, go sit down and write. Writing begets, right? I'm going to make t-shirts and stickers and everything else, because I think people forget that. Like, so much happens once you start writing. Like, the story starts to open, it leads you to new moments and new discoveries. And that is a lot of my process. Like, I start with one thing, and then I just, like I said, I'm digging, but I'm writing. And that's how it all comes to me. And I think that's what people forget. So I'm always like, writing begets writing. All of my students know this.
That's fantastic and important, I think, because, we often talk about how writing is not just what goes on the page. We give ourselves permission
Yeah.
to consider reading a part of writing or taking a walk and thinking about the work, but not in lieu of actually doing the work.
Yes. Yes.
Which,
And, I am all for, I call myself a rage walker now, like the perimenopause, menopause rage. I'm like, I'm going on a rage walk, everybody. And the books, like the ones that inspire me are all behind me, like the books that lead me to writing. So I'll be reading and then I start writing in my own head. They're filled. Like I believe in writing in books, other people's books, and but they're filled with my whatever I'm working on. And then I go and I take it to the computer. And I'm all for all of that. But you can't skip the most important part, which is actually sitting down and staying there through the hard stuff. Like when you get to that point where you're like, I don't know what happens next. You just keep writing and you are going to discover it.
I needed to hear that today. Thanks, Kristin.
Good. I think I needed to hear that today.
We have a traditional last question for this podcast, and it is, when Clementine Crane Prefers Not To is made into a movie or series, what do you think the theme song should be?
Oh, man. Can I look?
Yes.
I made a playlist for her. Paris Paloma. Labor by Paris Paloma.
Yes, I know it. It's perfect.
Yep. That is it. And then also Buster Poindexter's Hot, 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 if you want to throw that.
Kristin Bair, thank you so, so, so much for coming on today. It's really been a treat talking.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thanks for joining us on Literary Prospects. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.